When the room fell silent, you felt it a fracture in the world you thought you knew. Words hung in the air like empty threats, and in that frozen breath, you understood. Power isn't given, it's perceived. They looked at you expecting shame, apology, submission. Instead, you sat still, watching disbelief twist their faces. In that moment, you became untouchable, not by force, but by a stillness they couldn't parse. You've been gaslit into believing that kindness demands vulnerability. You've been told that conflict is weakness and that your worth needs announcing. You chased approval through smiles that never stuck, begged for grace in rooms where silence reigned. Tonight, you close those doors. Tonight, the mirror doesn't lie, your reflection is no longer prey. Perception is the battlefield, and every glance, every pause, every unspoken message is ammunition. Imagine walking into conversations like a ghost, your presence a razor edge. You control the tempo of words by withholding your own. You let their doubts echo back, amplifying their unease. They apologize not because they're sorry, but because you never flinched. They retreat, believing they misread the map of your mind. You have become the architect of reality, silencing noise with absence, bending narratives through subtle restraint. This isn't about smiling through pain. It's about rewriting the script they thought they authored. It's a reversal of roles, so clean it feels surgical. No explanations, no defenses, only quiet authority. They wanted to see you break. Instead, they witnessed the calm before your storm. And in that calm, you planted a seed of fear. What else could you be capable of? If this cuts deeper than any pep talk ever could, if you feel the weight of every stare recalibrating to your advantage, lean in, subscribe and commit to this clarity. Become the observer in every exchange, the unseen force that sets the rules. You've already felt the tremor beneath every word you didn't speak. Now, watch how they falter when your silence becomes strategy. You sit across from them, an enemy disguised as a friend, with nothing but your untouchable calm. Their sentences hang like traps. They bait you with familiar jabs, expecting a win. Instead, you close the gap between intention and outcome by turning your gaze inward, making your exterior unreadable. They search your expression for guilt, for hesitation, for flinching. There's none. And when they realize you're unmoved, confusion blooms in their eyes. You remember the night they laughed at your dreams, the subtle twist of their lips as they predicted your failure. That memory isn't a scar, it's a blueprint. You studied their cadence, their cheapest moves. Tonight, you deploy your silence with precision. Each pause is a calculated incision, severing their certainty. You aren't here to outshout them. You're here to outlast their assumptions. Watch how they stumble, teaching them restraint through the simple act of withholding. This is power refined, no fury, no tremor, only absolute control. They shift in their seat, leaning forward to fill the void your lack of reaction creates. They mistake their own discomfort for authority. You let them build castles on shifting sand. Then, when they point to your defiance, you smile without movement, an internal victory. Their bravado evaporates. They scramble to fill the empty space with apologies they don't own. You do not nod, you do not speak. You wait, because the world yields to those who master the gap between words and silence. Remember how you once believed that empathy meant weakness? That vulnerability invited attack? That misconception cost you respect, cost you peace. Now you correct it. Not with lectures, not with manifestos, only through your quiet recalibration. You let them lean on their own misconceptions until they collapse under the weight of their misjudgment. This is the art of detachment, a shield wrought from stillness. Your mind remains a fortress, your intentions locked behind gates they cannot see. They lash out, desperate for a reaction, and you gift them only a mirror of their own desperation. Look back at every moment you swallowed your words to keep the peace. Those moments were debts you thought you repaid with smiles and nods. But peace built on concession is a currency that devalues the moment you next demand respect. You reclaim those debts now, not by confrontation, but by absence. You don't raise your voice. You elevate your presence above every insult they hurl. And when they finally quiet down, you realize you're constructing a new reality where your silence speaks louder than their noise. They wanted conflict. They got stillness. They wanted tears. They got steel. They wanted submission. They got sovereignty. This is not a transformation they can see coming, because it happens in the gaps in every breath you choose not to waste. You're no longer a reactive entity. You are the observer and the arbiter. They realize their maps lead nowhere. Their strategies evaporate. You stand apart, a lone silhouette against the storm of their uncertainty. Now, feel it settling in your chest, that cold pulse of undeniable authority. It isn't drawn from volume or aggression. It is drawn from the vacuum you create when you refuse to feed their drama. Each moment you hold your peace, you turn them inward, forcing them to confront their own emptiness. They call you cold, because they don't understand that beneath your calm lies a fire they cannot extinguish. Carry this moment forward. Carry this silence as the deadliest weapon you will ever wield. And as they scramble to make sense of your stillness, remember, he who controls perception controls the world. They leaned in again, this time testing your boundaries with veiled provocations. A laughing jest about your ambition. A sideways comment on your alliances. You register each syllable, cataloging its intention. Most would react, defend, clarify, retreat. You do none of these. Instead, your gaze narrows just a fraction, like a shutter closing on a lens, and they catch that moment. The instant you decided not to be moved, their bite dissolves on the air. They repeat the insult, softer now, uncertain. You remain still, the epicenter of a quake they cannot feel. In that stillness, they lose their footing. You recall the evening you first tasted betrayal, the sharp snap of trust breaking. You let that memory surface, not to drown you in pain, but to sharpen the edge of your resolve. Pain is memory's crude teacher. Silence is its surgical instrument. You learn 12 ways to apologize. Or so you thought before you realized apologies are currency spent only when you value the deficit. Tonight, you value nothing less than your sovereign composure. Every past fracture becomes a reinforcement. Every old wound a lesson in absence. They circle your mind with feigned concern. Are you okay? They ask, as though your humanity is their concession. They expect gratitude. You give none. You tilt your head toward the shadowed corner of the room, as if something else commands your attention. They scramble to explain, to justify, to humanize themselves in your presence. Their narrative unravels thread by thread. You don't need to speak. Your silence broadcasts their collapse. Authority isn't proclaimed. It's absorbed by the vacuum you create. This is not arrogance. It's clarity. You felt the intoxication of vanity when you believed your kindness would bind them. You felt the bitterness when that kindness betrayed you. Now you transmute those shards into steel. You no longer supply them with your vulnerabilities. You trade in absence, not presence. Let them chase ghosts of tenderness where none reside. Every step they take is a concession to your unspoken code. You owe no one an explanation, no one your soul. Notice how they scramble to reframe the conversation, inserting empathy where you refuse to respond. They ask about your weekend, your family, your plans, anything, to pull you back into normalcy, back into vulnerability. You answer with a tilt of your smile, and a blink that suggests you hold stories they cannot hear. And as they search for threads of liability in your expression, you weave a tapestry of unbreakable calm. They're left dangling, wondering which question to ask next, which match to light. You remain an enigma. In their unease, you see the reflection of your own transformation. You were once that desperate seeker, probing every silence for answers. Now you understand. Silence isn't absence of sound. It's presence of power. The world rushes to fill the void you leave, and in doing so, shows you its true shape. They reveal their tactics, their fears, their weaknesses. All you do is wait. Each beat of your heart echoes that truth, growing louder in the hollows of their assumptions. They begin to speak of loyalty, of bonds, of respect, but their words carry the weight of desperation. Respect gained through forceful speech is empty. Respect earned through silent dominance is lasting. They realize this too late. The moment they fall silent, you lean forward, a glint in your eye. Not a move, not a word, just intention. They feel the shift, the magnetic pull of your presence, and know they stand on the edge of something they cannot name. By the time they retreat into the safety of small talk, you've already won. Not because you conquered them, but because you mastered yourself. Your silence became their guide, their mirror, and their defeat. They wanted to see behind the mask. Instead, they saw only fragments, each piece more unsettling than the last. You have taught them that the hardest force to wield is what they cannot touch. As they rise to leave, you let the quiet settle like dust over the room. No farewells, no smiles, just the lingering question in their minds. Who is this person they thought they knew? And more importantly, who could they become if they embraced that same unshakable stillness? You remember their last attempt to corner you, a circle of forced camaraderie around a table, wine glasses shimmering under guilt-drenched lights. Their words dripped with contrition they never felt, a cheap performance meant to draw you back into the fold. You let it play out like a theater piece you'd seen a dozen times. They waited for your forgiveness to seal their alibi. Instead, you poured nothing into your glass, leaving it half full and trembling in its own imbalance. They shifted, leaning forward, voice dropping an octave as if intimacy could ensnare you. They spoke of shared histories, safe harbors you'd once believed in. You traced the rim of your glass with a fingertip, each rotation a silent refusal. In that gesture, you reclaimed the narrative. They unspooled memories, expecting gratitude. You held nothing but the void between past and present, and in that void, your power expanded. You felt the weight of their eyes, straining to decipher your calm. Their apology, once a rope to pull you in, lay discarded. You watched them scramble, twisting phrases into new pleas. They offered compliments, empty currency, hoping to buy your warmth. You remained withdrawn, a fortress visible only in its shadows. They drowned in their own attempts to connect, unaware that every reach widened the gulf. You think back to the day you decided you'd rather be feared than pitied, not through cruelty, but through inscrutability. No lash of anger, no tear of vulnerability, just an impenetrable boundary drawn by silence. You practiced this articulation of absence until it became muscle memory. And now, each encounter is a test they fail before it begins. They gasp for relevance, tossing barbs like flares in the dark. Each one fizzles upon hitting your stillness. They try again, more subtle an offhand remark about your loyalties. You catch the implication and let it hang in the air, like a guillotine, unsheathed but motionless. Their bravado fractures into uncertainty. They ask a question, any question, to fill the silence you've weaponized. You offer nothing but the faintest tilt of your head, as if considering a threat from miles away. Their frustration becomes visible. Tight jaws, quick breaths, eyes flicking from your face to the exit. They realize they invited a fight they cannot win, yet they cling to one last strategy: charm, a half smile, a soft tone, a narrative of togetherness. You let it wash over you, untouched. In that moment, you are both mirror and abyss. They see their reflection warp. In the black pool of your indifference, you drift through these encounters like a ghost, your intentions unreadable. They cannot gear up for an assault when they don't know what you plan to do next. Fear lodges in their minds, a slow burn poison, and that fear is your silent ally. It turns allies into skeptics, skeptics into doubters, and doubters into supplicants. You haven't spoken a single threat. Why would you? When your absence says more, the night closes around you, and they retreat, shoulders hunched against a defeat they can't name. You remain seated, the empty wine glass your trophy. In its half-full reflection, you glimpse the shape of your sovereignty. No handshake, no agreement, no reconciliation. Just the residue of your command hovering in the air, heavier than any word. This is the pattern they will carry with them. A silent specter of your presence, haunting every room you're not in. They will rehearse apologies that echo in emptiness. Long after you vanish from their sight, they will chase the enigma you leave behind, convincing themselves they can catch you again. But you will be elsewhere still, silent, sovereign, while they search for the ghost of the calm you mastered. Now, as the door clicks closed, you exhale a breath you never realized you'd been holding. You feel the hollow expand, a reservoir of power born from emptiness. Their failure to provoke you becomes the lesson they'll teach themselves. They will never know you taught them that a soul unshaken is the deadliest weapon of all. They cornered you one last time in a hallway washed in fluorescent light, words ricocheting off sterile walls. A calm insistence. "Talk to me," they said, voice softened by concern. They imagined empathy would crack your armor. You slowed your pace, matching theirs step for step, as if deliberating on a confession. Their jaw clenched, victory already mapped out. You let them circle, hungry for a reaction, only to find the space between your words widening, an abyss they cannot cross. They stop, breath catching, the plea lodged in their throat. You don't speak. You become the silence they begged for. In that lingering moment, you feel the culmination of every wound, every slight, every apology you swallowed like poison. Those memories aren't anchors, they're propellants, fueling this final stand. You learned that true power isn't declared in loud announcements, but in controlled disappearance. You dissolve their expectations until they chase shadows of your intent. Stumbling into the trap of their own making, they had rehearsed the reconciliation. You offered them only your gaze, a void where their words dissolve. They attempt to redefine the space with laughter, a brittle imitation of ease. They step closer, trying to invade your boundary, believing physical proximity can demand compliance. You lean back, a fraction, like a tide receding from a shore, leaving them stranded in the mud of their assumptions. They reach again, touch your arm gentle, reassuring. You don't flinch, but the contact echoes like a drumbeat in your mind, each pulse resonating with the power of restraint. They retract their hand as if burned, eyes wide with surprise. That single moment of contact became a confession. They know they crossed the line. You see the pivot in their stance, a subtle admission that they underestimated you. Emboldened, they try another angle. Solidarity, a shared cause, a mutual enemy. They paint scenarios of unity, expecting sparks of agreement. You tilt your head, letting the scene play out behind your eyelids. You imagine the battlefield of their thoughts, riddled with doubt. As they speak of alliances, your stillness morphs into a mirror reflecting their own uncertainty. They pause, disarmed, searching for common ground that doesn't exist. This is the apex of psychological theater. You didn't raise your voice, but you rewrote the script. You let them gamble every tactic they had, and each time, your silence shattered their chips. They realized that in this game, you set the rules by refusing to play. They wanted to see you lose, to expose a weakness. Instead, you exposed theirs. You stand not as a participant, but as the hand dealing the cards, every shuffle, every reveal, choreographed by your absence. Their defense crumbles into questions. Why are you so detached? What do you intend? You give them nothing but the faintest crease at the corner of your mouth, an unspoken answer. Your intention is sovereignty. They recoil, a flicker of fear surfacing. And fear is the final currency you mine tonight. It compels them to concede ground, to retract their claims, to step back into the light they no longer control. You begin to walk again, each step measured, reclaiming the hallway as your domain. They retreat, stumbling into softer voices behind them, empty conversations that can no longer touch you. The fluorescent lights blur as you exit, leaving them under their harsh glare, exposed and unequipped. In that departure, you crystallize your lesson. The world shifts to accommodate those who refuse to beg for permission. Behind you, their silence echoes louder than any apology they could muster. They understand, in that abrupt vacancy, that you orchestrated their defeat not with force, but with calculated absence. You are the void they fear, the stillness that unsettles, the invisible architect of every outcome, and with every step away, you solidify your dominion. Perception is not a mirror, it is a weapon, and you wield it without a sound. Tonight, they corner you under the harsh glare of buzzers and blinking screens. A stage set for one last power play. They've gathered allies, rehearsed their lines, lined up their witnesses, believing strength lies in numbers. You step into the circle alone, calm an armor no coalition can breach. Their voices rise in unison, a tide of accusation meant to drown you out. You let their torrent crash against the silence you command. You tilt your head, as if listening to a distant echo, and they feel every ripple of their doubt magnify. In that hollow hum, their unity fractures. They search your face for a crack, for the spark that once betrayed your anger. They find none. You let them circle closer, their bravado dripping through each accusation. They question your loyalty, your motives, your very humanity. Their words are weapons sharpened on collective contempt, yet you stand unmoved, a sentinel of stillness. You feel their frustration coil like a serpent around their confidence, tightening until they gasp. The room shrinks, becomes claustrophobic, as every gaze hunts for a reaction that never comes. They realize their strategy is bankrupt. No tag team of taunts can breach a fortress built from quiet resolve. You recall the moment you vowed never to surrender your inner dominion again. That vow wasn't forged in grand declarations, but in the silent nights you spent alone, learning that absence of reaction is reaction. You practiced silence like a martial art, each withheld word a disciplined strike against their expectations. Tonight, your mastery is complete. You watch them unravel under their own need to be heard, their voices stumbling over each other in a desperate scramble for meaning. Your silence holds them accountable for every syllable they cast like stones. They attempt one final gambit, mimicry of compassion, a chorus of, "We care about you." They lean in, offering hands outstretched like bridges. You consider the gesture, tracing its contours in your mind, then retract. You let their hands hover in the air, suspended in uncertainty. That hesitation, and only that, sends them spiraling inward. They stare at their own warmth-turned weapon, unable to decide whether to advance or retreat. You've weaponized doubt itself, and it cuts deeper than any insult ever could. You step back, breaking the circle with a single movement. that feels like a gust of wind clearing smoke. Their eyes follow your retreat, not knowing whether to celebrate or mourn the end of this performance. In the widening gap you leave, they search for closure, for the final word that might tie up loose ends. But there is none. You have taught them that endings are illusions, only moments of transition. They stand in your absence, holding the echoes of their own making. As you walk away, every footfall echoes with the weight of your sovereignty. Behind you, they remain frozen in a tableau of self-examination, their unity dissolved into isolated fragments. They will recount this night in hushed gatherings, dissecting every silence, every blink, every small exhalation you did not waste on them. They will realize the true lesson too late. It was never about what you said, but about what you withheld. You become legend in their mindscapes, the unspoken strategist, the unseen storm, the quiet architect of their unraveling. In the wake of every challenge you master, you feel that hollow swell of power flooding through your veins, an echo of victories won without a sound. You know now that the greatest freedom lies not in uproar, but in the space you carve between expectation and reality. They will whisper of your silence as if it were a curse, but you understand it's a gift. The gift of self-possession no one can confiscate. When they recount these nights in their own desperate soliloquies, let them remember the void you forged, a testament to the unbreakable mind. Carry this lesson into every room you enter and every conversation you confront. Let your absence speak louder than their pleas. Watch as conviction shatters their assumptions, one silent moment at a time. If you feel the pull of their old patterns, remind yourself, you owe no explanations, no apologies, no permission. You are the architect of your own dominion. Subscribe for the next confrontation that strips away illusions, and join the ranks of those who march unflinching through every storm.